more details with the Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, Dr. Mike Masiapato. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Let's just start with helping our viewers understand who is deemed to be undesirable. What kind of person is that?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Bongiwe, and we appreciate the opportunity as the Border Management Authority. So indeed, Bongiwe, one of the key things that we have indicated in the brief earlier in the day was to indicate that we have actually observed a high number of the hits. And that is primarily on the basis of the rollout of the biometric movement control system, which effectively give us a widespread, in terms of the various types of hits that we need to ultimately have. But when we talk about undesirables, these are fairly people that we would describe as prohibited individuals. As you will know, globally, as the law enforcement authorities, we interact with each other. So there are instances where people would have been doing things in particular jurisdictions, and those people are actually in a run, and you will find that that particular country is looking for those individuals. So at the point of those people arriving at the ports through the biometric movement control system, we basically check through the systems. And in those instances, we do not allow those individuals into the country. We can give an example here, for instance, of people that are considered to be involved in terror-related activities. In those instances, we wouldn't allow a terrorist, as it were, into the Republic. So that's the category of individuals. But at the same time, there are those that are being sought by police services in other jurisdictions. And in those instances, we then allow our police services to be able to interface with them and be able to activate Interpol and be able to get those people processed accordingly. So that is basically what we are talking about. So in this period, as you have indicated, we talk about over 6,000 people that had been denied entry along those lines.
So the natural question then would be, as you talk about the processing of these particular individuals in various forms, does it include their arrest?
Yeah, no, indeed. Bongiwe, there are those that will obviously be taken into the custody by the SAPS, as I've indicated, working together with Interpol.
Mm-hmm.
As you will know, in the South African context, we do have Interpol officials in the space, and they are able to handle those people accordingly. And of course, by the way, maybe around the issue of undesirability, let me also clarify the point that the people that had overstayed in South Africa, for instance, that we have declared undesirable, meaning that you actually entered the Republic some time back without, for example, you overstayed in the Republic, and therefore we have declared you undesirable. If you try to come back within the 5-year period of your ban, you are also declared undesirable and you will not be allowed to enter the Republic. So those are the categories of the people that are falling under undesirable. Then we do have another category that we call inadmissible individuals. So inadmissible individuals in this instance, Bongi, where we talk about people that would come at the port, but when they arrive at the port, we pick up that the passport they are carrying is not valid. So you are not admitted, meaning you are inadmissible. And there will be those that will be carrying visas that are invalid. Then you will be basically inadmissible, meaning we can't admit you. Or you come from what we call yellow fever endemic countries, and you arrive at the port without a yellow fever certificate, then we won't also admit you. So that is the category of the 4,000 people. Then the 15,000 people is the people that fairly just try to enter the Republic without documentation at all. So those are basically what we describe as undocumented. So all in all, is over 27,000 people that has been denied entry into the Republic on the period of the 6th of December 2023 until the 18th of January 2024.
All right. So there's another, point that I picked up from the briefing and the statement earlier on, which is quite concerning. And I saw that in your statement you're expressing concern about it as well. It's around the public transport, drivers who would then continue taking people into the country illegally. All of this, of course, is not new. And I wonder what strategy is being put in place to address this so that you curb this once and for all.
Yeah, you see, Bongi, on the basis that we have started actually doing this border management differently. So one of the things that we did, you will remember in December, we spoke about having intercepted children that were being ferried by buses and all of those. So that is one issue that has been very much a concern for us as the Border Management Authority. So immediately after the festive period, we had a meeting with over 30 bus companies that were fairly coming from Zimbabwe, and some of them were coming from South Africa. And we started a conversation around how do we work together and make sure that we deal with the scourge of illegal migration. So on that particular basis, we had agreed with them that we need to institute certain measures. One of those is they will start intensifying their requirements when people procure cross-border tickets, that everybody who then procure the ticket for the purposes of themselves traveling, they need to produce a passport. Secondly, they will also make sure that as people enter into their bus, they become our extension by making sure that people produce passports. But more importantly, they will also make sure that in the process of their drivers not necessarily complying to this process, they will be able to do accountability on those drivers. And that arises from the point whereby, Bongi, where that a bus will carry people with documents, and then everything gets accounted for, everything is sorted. But along the way, they go around carrying people that are illegal for their own means. So on that basis, they've committed to make sure that they start dealing with those. But additional to that, Bongi, we are going to be engaging with other companies in other countries, particularly those that are using Bed Bridge, those coming from Zambia, those coming from Malawi and the like, to make sure that they work with us to address this whole issue of conveyancers carrying people illegally. We do impose administrative fines. It's 15,000 per individual. As we have indicated, just in these 43 days, Bongi, where we actually put over 3.5 million fines, and we collected around over 9 million in terms of the payments. But at the end of the day, we also spoke to the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency to say, if we have bus companies that continues not to work with us, we should be able to look at withdrawing their cross-border permits.
It's one thing to listen to what you're saying in the strategy that's been put in place, and I'm listening to all these various stakeholders that you're talking about. But there's one critical one that I'm wondering if you also, including in this conversation. Those are some of the people who work for you, because I'm listening to how you're describing all of this happens. It cannot happen without their involvement. So what happens to the officials who are allowing all of this to unfold as well?
You see, Bongi, when we talk about having to do border management differently, we are actually, or we have already started instituting a number of mechanisms. Let me give you this example on your question in particular. Initially, we had instances where people would enter into a port environment, regardless of whatever they are carrying, but they will enter into a port, meaning a processing area. They end up arriving at the desk of an immigration officer. So once that happens, then that is where your corruption actually emanates. So what we have done, we have started doing things differently, is to intensify access control into the port of entry. And in that process, we then deploy the border guards at the entry points into the port, meaning that only people who are having the requisite documents are allowed in the port of entry. What that does is it then starts to make sure that our immigration officers are no longer that vulnerable and end up themselves ending up having to engage with people without documentation and end up having to have some arrangements and then bribes get paid. So when people who then appear before the immigration officer are only those people who qualify to travel, that on its own is the first intervention. But there are a lot of other things, Bongi, that we are looking at, which are things that are part of our plan. I mean, a typical one is making sure that all our officials are to be working with the body cams so that we are able to monitor outside the actual environment where they are, the activities they do, at the same time make sure that they are not able to switch off those cameras. They'll be switched off at a central place, and all of those are the plans that we are actually to implement. Hence we say it can only be switched off through an authorization when people go to the bathroom. So these are some of the issues, but If we are to talk about all of the plans that we have in starting to deal with the historical challenges of border management, is a lot of things, Bongiwe, that we put on the table. The other issue, as you will know, Section 13 of the Border Management Authority also allows to start doing intensive vetting of the officials, something that was not there before. And that is a process that is ongoing. But at the same time, making sure that we also do continuous lifestyle audits. When we are able to pick up people who start generating wealth outside their means, we should then be able to activate. So all of these things are the things that we have started doing. In the current year, Bongiwe, there will be a lot of these interventions being put through. The focus of 2022-2023 was also to establish the organization and all of those processes. Now we are fairly established. Now we are starting to focus on the actual work.
Let's see then, what happens with your work and what are some of the areas that you think you need to tighten as you continue then your work. But let me thank you so much for giving us an update there, Dr. Masiapato.